I had to search a little bit, but I did find EKU's definition of blended web courses. And interestingly enough, you can teach up to 69% online and it not be considered blended. So and I believe this definition changed a couple of years ago. I think it used to be 50%, but now it's when 70% or more of a course instruction is online, combined with in traditional in-classroom delivery. So that's considered a blended course. And blended and hybrid are used interchangeably in the online world. I think blended is probably a newer name. The course that I'll specifically be talking about is situated in our Master's of Occupational Therapy degree, and it is an elective. Before I came to the department in 2011, 2012, this course was on the books, but it had never been offered because not enough students had signed up for it. And that's changed dramatically with the introduction of the course, and I'll explain that as I go along. So when we talk about blended learning, I think it's really important to think about how you're going to connect the face-to-face time with the online interaction and vice versa, the online work that the student's doing, linking that back to what they're doing in the classroom. So this course was developed as a hybrid course to start with, was developed in the fall of 2012 and then implemented in 2013. I follow the pedagogy of backward design.
Can you click that?
Okay.
It has a little, it'll be easier.
All right. Okay. And so in looking at that from a university perspective, and you see this with our professional faculty development goals, you have faculty development goals or student learning outcomes at the university level. Then it gets filtered down to the academic program, to the individual course, to the unit that you're teaching, and then specifically to the lesson. And how you teach is actually backwards. You'll present the lesson, and then you'll share with the students how that meets the unit and the course outcomes. And then it's also in curriculum planning and design connected to the program in the university. So in looking at the stages of backwards design, there are several stages. One is to take the big ideas, the big picture, and ask yourself, what are the goals for this course? And what knowledge and skills do the students need at the end of this course? And that will help you identify the desired results that you want in your course. So you're really starting with the learning outcomes. And then you move to determining the evidence. So you ask yourself when you're planning the course, what do I need to keep in mind in terms of the evidence, the assessments that I'm creating for the students, and how will those assessments tell if someone's meeting the learning outcomes or not meeting the learning outcomes? And then finally, planning the learning activities needs to be, the last step after you've determined what the assessments are and what the big picture is of the knowledge and skills that the students need to come from completing this course. So if you take those stages of backwards design and look at a blended learning model, then you have to consider the instructional component. And I've gone to a couple of Lilly conferences where there have been presentations that suggest that the instructional component is the most important part of the course in terms of student interaction and what's actually in the course. It's the instructional plan for how you intend to deliver the content and hold the students responsible. That is, probably the most important area to think about. But you also look at the learning environment, whether it's online, media rich, those types of things, and where all that intersects is in blended learning. When you think of the learning outcomes, you can think of it as a roadmap. That's another way to look at it. And so, it's basically presenting what we've already talked about, but I want you to think about which learning outcomes might be better presented online and which learning outcomes might be that are presented in class. For example, in the course that I'm going to talk about, the therapeutic occupational therapy, therapeutic modalities and OT practice, identified the cognitive learning outcomes as being central and able to be put totally online. And it was only the psychomotor and affective skills that required the student to be in the classroom to practice for competencies and to perform those competencies. So you want to share that information with the student in their syllabus and topical outline. And when I pull my course up in Blackboard, we'll look at the topical outline and how the online and the in-class learning environment are intermeshed and interweaved in terms of meeting the learning outcomes and getting the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains covered with the knowledge and skills that they need on completion of the course. And then you also want to make sure that the assessment strategies fit the learning outcomes and fit the level of learning of the students. The course that I'll be referring to is a master's level course. So there is some assumption that students have initiative and are motivated as self-learners. So much of what they need to know before they come to a practice lab is online. And that's the information is implemented in different ways with quizzes and textbook, videos, that type of thing. And then, you know, you want to design the learning activities so that you meet all of your course goals.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is there any way this course could be taught completely online? You said you had that one component that really
Yes.
hands-on. Is there a way they could perhaps videotape a procedure or something?
That's a really good question. Actually, that's what I did my doctoral work on. It was with a different course. It was with a course where I taught students how to transfer patients from wheelchair to a bed. And we did do videotapes, and the students, we did return demonstrations of videotape with the students. So the faculty were actually grading the student based on the videotape of their skills. So it takes a little bit of technology and back and forth, but I think it can be done. The students' feedback was that it was not ideal. They preferred at least one practice session hands-on with instructor feedback. So yes, it's possible. Is it best practice? I'm not sure at this point. Not with the performance skills that we require from our students in healthcare. So that's a great question.
Just what kind of skills do you require from your students? What kind of hands-on skills?
In this course, we are having them learn how to use therapeutic ultrasound, electrical stimulation, and iontophoresis. So they're not familiar with the machinery or how to program it or how to clinically reason through a patient and their symptoms and what parameters to set the machines at. And then I think this is a particularly interesting slide because, I've been teaching for quite a while. And if you think about, traditionally what we're doing, lecturing, reading, audiovisual, that's a lot of what we do in class. And interestingly enough, I think when you teach online, you do lean more towards the audiovisual and then the discussion group. Now, the practice by doing and the teaching others and the demonstration, a little more difficult to do online. That's why I think a blended course suits very well in terms of learning therapeutic hands-on skills. So I'm going to pull up my Blackboard course, and we're just going to look at the different elements, the announcements, the topical outline, the discussions. I also have not tried wikis and journals and blogs in this course, but after taking the summer course, it's something that I hope to implement the next time we teach the course in the spring. And so we'll look at the sort of the setup of the course. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. So, the first thing I want to talk about is the announcement. Most of you that teach online are probably familiar with putting out your announcement there a week or two before the class actually starts. I've learned that even if you put this up and email it to them, even if the class hasn't started, they'll receive the email because they're already registered in the class. And so I like to put a picture of myself. I like to put a picture of the current editions of the books so that they can visually, see what those are, give them a way to contact me. When I taught this course this summer, I usually think it's really important to be in class the first day of class, but it ended up my husband had surgery and we were in Nashville, and so I taught the first day of class from a hospital. And it took several elements to set that up. It took the technical support. It took an office person to have copies of syllabi and things that I wanted to hand out. I as a policy, print out a color-coded copy of my topical outline and syllabus, handed out the first day because I really think in color, and like the exams are all in red and that type of thing. And then I also had a student worker who was sort of coordinating between texting me and coordinating with the technical support. So you can, do that first day of class remotely. I learned that. And then I generally would recommend that you post at least once to 2 times a week. And my posts generally are concerned with connecting what we did in class with what they're doing online, and then the reverse, connecting what's happening online to what we're going to be doing in class, so that they know how all the material relates. And so that's what I wanted to kind of show you in terms of the announcements. And then for course syllabus and topical outline, I do an audio PowerPoint of the syllabus. What I've found, I did a research project on this class for the first 3 times we taught it. And we spent a lot of time doing the lectures audio PowerPoint. There was 1 or 2 students in each group. We did 3 groups who really used the audio PowerPoint because that's how they learned. The other students didn't really think they were of value. So that was a lot of time, for a small number of students, but there were like 2 or 3 students out of 76 that preferred the audio. All right, I want to pull up my topical outline, and I do color code everything. I may have taken it out of this copy, but I also want to, oh, there we are. So things that are done in class, I put in a different color so they know that that's in class. And I also have it written out, but I tend to color code it. And this course also meets our state requirements for a specialty license in the use of modalities. And so this extra column is how we meet those criteria. And in all honesty, I think the reason that students had not signed up for this course in the past was that it was not linked to real life value. And now this is an elective, but we usually have about 75 students, and at least 55 to 60 of them sign up for this elective because they see the real life value in getting that extra specialty certificate to be licensed to perform this treatment.
Yes. Which topic did you add? Which one did you say that you added for this?
From the summer course?
Yeah.
I've added wikis, blogs, and journals.
Oh, okay. All right.
And it's not on here, but I do have it cut and pasted in the course. Yeah. All right.
Next question.
Sure.
The audio PowerPoint, so that's just recording basically a lecture with PowerPoint to the student.
What I did, and it was a little more time consuming than like putting it on Screencast-O-Matic or Zoom or some other service, I did each one individually so that I could go in and update it as the textbook and practice changed.
And then you said that only a handful of students like that, so what did they prefer, just looking at PowerPoints?
Yes. Yeah. Reading the textbook and looking at the PowerPoints.
I'm sure you didn't check this, but was there any difference in the grades between the 2?
There wasn't enough, there were only 3 out of 76. There really wasn't enough to get a good feel for that? That's a really good question.
So the others actually said they didn't really care for the audio.
Right. And in my PowerPoint, well, let me go to that. We'll skip to that. So when I did a research practice about what learning strategies were the most helpful in learning and preparing to pass the performance competencies, practicing in class was number one. Actually performing the competency, was number two. And they really did not like how we set up the discussion boards at first, and now we've changed that so that the discussion boards relate more directly to the actual performance competencies that they have to pass. So it was interesting feedback to get because we've changed some things in the course, based on their feedback. Let me go to the results feedback since we're on that question. So they thought that there were videos and that PowerPoints, all of that worked well, the practice in lab, the professor guidance, all of that. What needed improvement, they felt like they wanted more in-class time. They wanted extra labs. They wanted less student problem solving on their own, which that was interesting. And they wanted the discussion board refined, which we've done. So we took all that feedback in the course and have made some changes.
One question from Sarah. Do you have any suggestions on best practices managing the class size? You mentioned you had 75 students.
It wasn't all at one time.
Okay.
We have about 25 at a time. So, but we also, like in class, the machines that we use are very expensive. They're like $2,000 a piece. So the machinery is limited. And so I will have like in the summer, I teach this in the summer as well. I'll have an all-day lab and they come in like 2 or 3 hour blocks, 6 of them will come and 8 more. And so they get a lot more individual attention that way in their practice sessions. But I think it would be difficult to have 75 in this course. I would need some, I would be the facilitator and I would need other people to help with the grading and we do bring in outside therapists to help grade the performance competencies because they are very time intensive. All right, and to get back to Blackboard, I click down here, pull it down. Oops, sorry. There we go.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. And then I do set people up in practice groups and they stay in the same group for their discussion boards and for their practice in class. I found out that is a good carryover. If they stay with the same, usually I divide into 3 so that there's a client, there's a pretend client, a pretend therapist, and then someone else sort of observing and commenting and asking questions. And then for the discussion board, we have, I weight the discussions towards the beginning. So the first week we have 2 discussions. The second week we have 3 discussions, kind of like the summer course. And so, people are like, oh, this is too much. But that gives us the 4th week to start practicing and to do their competencies. And so in the summer, they come the first day, and then they don't come for like 3 weeks. Then they have a practice day. They actually have 2 practice days. What we found out is that they need to practice at least 6 hours with 1 machine to get technically competent at it. And so the week that they come into class, they don't have any online assignments usually. And then the first half of the course is geared towards ultrasound and learning about all the therapeutic modalities that occupational therapists need and the clinical reasoning that goes behind that, the regulations, all of that. And then the second half of the course is devoted to electrical modalities, electrical stimulation and iontophoresis, which is pushing medication through your skin by using electricity. And so they have discussions in 5 and 6, and then they practice week 7 and 8, and then they have the they have the performance competency in week 8. So we have only 2 days of performance competencies, like one at midterm and one at final. And we do have to bring, if there's 24 people, we probably need at least 4 supervisors to check off their skills. So, you know, it takes a lot of time, but we ensure that they know what they're doing before they get out there and practice on an actual client. And then the only assignments that they submit, we had them write basically a progress note on how their session went in their practice competency. And we use the same format, it's called a SOAP note, that they've learned how to do in a previous class. So we can look at the carryover of them still knowing how to write notes, but introducing this new element of using a therapeutic modality. And then I like to divide my content up into weeks, which you can consider units. And I tell them very specifically what to do. Listen to PowerPoints, skim these resources, watch this video. The students took 3 courses last summer, and I got a lot of feedback that my course was easy to follow because I told them exactly, you know, what I expected of them in terms of, you know, listen to this, watch this, before you come to lab, you need to do this. And so they found it real helpful to be that direct and that specific. So it didn't leave anything to chance. I didn't just have PowerPoints up here, or I didn't have just, you know, these are the lab materials. I give them real specific instructions about, you know, what to do with that material. And even though it's redundant, every unit, and I know this is good practice for online, you know, I have what they're supposed to do on the discussion board and what they're supposed to do in terms of the quizzes. The quizzes are not worth a lot individually, and it's open book, and they have like 20 or 30 minutes. So if they want to look up the answer, that's fine with me, as long as they go through the process of becoming familiar with it. All right. Let's look at maybe a couple more.
I have a question.
Yes.
The SOAP notes, is that something specific to your discipline, or is that a reflection piece that you would recommend for other classes?
That's a great question. I would say it's a healthcare specific assignment. It stands for Subjective Objective Assessment and Plan. So it's how people in healthcare write progress on patients after they've worked with them in therapy. So I would say it's health discipline specific, but that's a great question. All right, maybe look at one more, and then I'll go to the wikis and journals and blogs that I'm have added this summer and will incorporate in the spring when I teach it. So this would be like a practice week. So they all sign up the first day of class, like what time their groups are going to come and practice. You know, everything is known beforehand. And then this is all the material that they need to review before they come. So there are videos on all the machines, all the different machines that we have. So we have like several different manufacturers. They don't know when they go to the clinic what machine they're going to get. So we have a variety of them. And when I first designed the course, I had the students creating videos, and I got a lot of feedback that that was too much for them. It was new material, plus they didn't necessarily know how to video something and get it to YouTube, and so they felt like they spent an inordinate amount of time doing that. And so once I got that feedback, I took that away, and the faculty is creating all the videos. Because it is a learning curve, you know, to make a video and upload it and then import it into another program. All right. So.
Looking for PowerPoint?
No, I'm going to go into my wikis and blogs. So I just created these to show y'all and to think about, well, actually I created them in the summer course, but I wanted y'all to be able to see what they were. I think blogs and journals and wikis have different purposes. And so when I took the course this summer, I thought about this course and I thought, okay, what would make sense as a blog? And so I decided their experience of when they were the pretend therapist and they were a practicing lab, they needed to go through and take a picture of themselves. And well, they could be either the therapist or the client. Take a picture of themselves, upload that, talk about the steps, that they went through to experience the modality. And these are familiar modalities, like putting on a hot pack, putting on a cold pack. You don't need specialty certification for that, but we teach them those things. And then, describe your reaction if you were the client. And what I was really trying to get at is the last number 5, how to explain to a future client what to expect when they're administering a hot pack or a cold pack or paraffin. I wanted them to know what it's going to feel like before they actually apply it to the client. So I thought that was a good experience to put into a blog. And they would have 2 opportunities during the course to do that. And I also, let's see, I think I had a grading rubric for the blog. Yeah, I'll pull that up. I'm not sure how well you can see that. But, basically we took all the elements that I listed, 5 elements, and put them into a grading rubric. All right. And then for the journals, it took me a while to figure out what might be an appropriate use of a journal in this course. It started out as a paper reflecting on what they'd learned in the course, and then we turned it into a discussion board at the very end. And then I thought maybe it might work better as a journal. Let's see, so instead of where's the scroll for to scoot it over? Not sure how to get it scooted over, but
Because it's cut off?
yeah.
Oh.
Do I have to? Wouldn't mind scooting it over a little bit.
I see.
Okay. Right now,
It's
screen.
It's probably a browser issue.
Okay, that's all right. But I think it's very important, especially students at a master's level, that they reflect on what all they've learned in a course. And so, it's maybe a 2-page paper, but I, instead of having it as a discussion board or a paper, I put it as a journal entry. And I think it's important to give them real specific guidelines, like at least 1 paragraph, at least 4 sentences. Otherwise, they may not go into detail enough to actually benefit from the assignment. And when they've done it as a paper or a discussion board, there've been some really meaty things that students have come up with in terms of learning about theirself, as opposed to what they actually got in the course. So I think that was a really helpful component. And then,
So
yes.
Did you find that, you said you went from like a paper to discussion board to journals?
Yes.
Did you find the journals being the most helpful or the most beneficial to the student?
I think they all are. I actually haven't implemented the journals yet because I just had the class this summer where I learned about journals and thought about where they might go in this course. And so this spring, I will change that from a discussion board post to a journal. I think the directions are real similar, but it'll be interesting to see if there's a difference between when it was a paper versus a discussion board versus a journal. That might be something interesting to look at. And then the last thing that I have added to the course but haven't implemented is a wiki tool. And, so I think you just really need to reflect on what's in your course and figure out if a journal, a discussion board, a wiki, or a blog might be the most appropriate. And so one of their discussion boards currently is that they look at different, it can be an article or it can be a media. For instance, there's some really good videos out there on wound healing. And some students may get more from a 3 or 5 minute video on wound healing than they would from getting a peer-reviewed research article. And so I allow them to do either or, and so there's some good combinations of those. And so we sort of divide it up into groups, and they all commented on different things about wound healing. All right. And so at this point, I really wanted to show you what I've incorporated in terms of a website called PlayPosit. There are actually started on Zaption, if any of you remember Zaption, which is now defunct. But I've played around with Edpuzzle and PlayPosit, and they're both websites that can turn your videos into video quizzes. And it's not too difficult to do. For instance, for this class, I have a, hang on. Oop. All right. I have a video that's called iontophoresis. And so basically, I took my iPhone, I did a short video with me demonstrating how to do this with one of my students, and it was, you know, a little bit over 4 minutes long. I uploaded it to YouTube, and then I imported it from YouTube into PlayPosit. And then in terms of here are the questions, and so sorry we don't have the audio, but I think it's good practice to talk for a while and then ask the question directly after you've shared the information that you want them to have. And so this is an example of one of my videos where they had several questions. And my intent of these videos is for them to learn how to use the materials or the machine before they get to practice lab, so that it takes less time for them to develop that skill. Yes.
So in the class, I guess like once you already hit the finish
right
here, that all the questions come right goes away, just populate those red lines. Is that what happens?
Yes. In fact, if I put it just on view, I mean,
for
the questions.
There's a lot of medications.
I pulled it up in a view where you see the questions.
That are used,
but
and the medication
what happens when a student watches it
access to medications,
is
so we are
that
using
the question pops up and they answer it, and then the question goes away. But it keeps statistics for me about how many students are answering the questions correctly. And
so we have actually a like syringe that you would fill from a cup of vinegar, and then you're going to saturate the pad through this.
That's a real good question. I use this as an entrance.
In this particular patch, you do not use alcohol to clean
I don't worry about
before
what
the
grade they
patch
made,
is applied.
but I do
if you need to
expect them
clean
to
the skin,
finish
you
it.
can use like a washcloth and soap and water.
And it's not too much of a learning curve, and you get
apply the medication until
I had like
patch
about
is saturated.
15 videos at this site. I deleted some of them because I'm working on a research project. I wanted to have enough room, but I had like 15 videos, and I still was on my free version of PlayPosit. So you just sign up for a free version. And I also, this is a different class, but I had students in groups. Okay, now I've messed up. But I had students develop videos in another class, and they actually did a pretty good job, most of them. Let's see. There we go. So it was a group of students.
Many individuals sustain back injuries due to improper lifting and poor body mechanics.
Quiz.
These injuries often occur due to lack of education and improper utilization of lifting techniques. Here we will display the incorrect and correct way to lift an item individually and with a team.
Yeah, and so
this is an example of an improper lift. Her feet are together, her knees are straight, her back is arched, and her neck is not in line with her spine. All of these.
So they very much enjoyed creating this product versus writing a paper that explains the same concepts. And I have the class, there's usually 5 or 6 groups, so the class is maybe 20 people, there's 5 or 6 groups, and we show them all one day, have popcorn, they decide, you know, which is the best of the group, and then I tell that group that I'm going to be showing it when I do presentations. So it's, you know, it's achievable for students to create videos as part of a assignment. All right. And then let me go back to the PowerPoint. There in the PowerPoint, it will give you links to my YouTube channel. I have about 100 or so videos, and then also to play pause it to those videos. How many of you are familiar with the ADDIE model? Okay, good. When I was working on my doctorate, which is in health education, they used the ADDIE model. And so here we are, we've run the course, and now we're looking at, you know, how did the course go? So this is your course evaluations and your reflection about what you need to change the next time and what went well and what didn't go well, and the student input and evaluations and peer input and evaluations. So, you know, I think we're all constantly trying to improve our courses so that students learn as much as they can and are able to apply that information in real life as they go forward. As I mentioned, I did do this as a poster at the Lilly conference, I think, and at our National Occupational Therapy Association conference. This is just a picture of what an ultrasound machine looks like, but you can see, maybe not very clearly, some of the feedback that the students gave us, which was really on target. And, you know, that sort of drove me to revise the course. You know, I was surprised that, you know, even the PowerPoints were not that important in terms of what they felt like they learned. And I know some instructors have gotten away from PowerPoints quite a bit. I think it helps, just gives you an outline to, you know, to talk. But it's interesting what they felt, you know, like what they felt was the most helpful in terms of them learning the material.
Do you provide scripts, like transcripts with your PowerPoints, with your voiceover PowerPoints?
That's a good question. Not all of them, no, because there's kind of a wait.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but in Play Pause It, I'm glad you mentioned that. In Play Pause It, there is a button where you can, it will print out a, thank you, I was looking for the word, on Play Pause It. So that's helpful. You don't have to have it adapted or accommodated
You think
outside.
most students would read transcripts or versus watch a PowerPoint, voiceover PowerPoint? I mean, like, different people prefer different modalities.
Right. Well, more of them preferred reading the textbook than they preferred reviewing the PowerPoints.
Right.
But there's not a big difference. So I guess my answer to that, I think it depends on the course, the class. You know, sometimes I can run this class and I get a lot of feedback on one thing, and sometimes I run it and don't get hardly any feedback. So I think it depends on the group, but also whatever it is you're teaching. Right. And then we sort of covered the results. After the study of this course, we did change, we now have feedback on all the quiz questions. So as soon as they take the quiz, well, that's not true. I release the quiz after the week is over and after everybody's taken the quiz. And then every question has feedback, so they know, you know, why one answer was not as correct as another answer. So that was helpful. And then we did change the discussion boards so they specifically relate to the learning outcomes and, more importantly, to the performance competencies that they have to practice. And then it was a sort of a big awakening to me that they required, there's basically 2 machines to learn, and then there's the iontophoresis, which is a patch, which is not as complicated. But overall, it took about 12 hours of class time to practice and really get competent at that. And, you know, before I started keeping track, I'm not sure I would have guessed that they would need that much time. And there's also research that if you do staggered practice, the learning is more long-term. So I'll have them come in like 2 to 3 hours one week, 2 to 3 hours the next week, sometimes even, you know, a third practice time, because that tends to integrate the learning in their brain for longer terms. And that's all I have.
Any questions?
I do. Sending with hybrid or sometimes even flipped classroom. Now, I know these are master students, so they should be highly motivated. But do you ever run across unprepared students that come in and they're supposed to have read, for example, the stuff about the equipment, and they come in and they haven't? I mean, how do you deal with that?
I think that's probably a real big frustration across the board. How I resolve that in this course is that they have to complete those video quizzes or take notes on the videos and present that before they're admitted to the practice lab.
Oh, okay.
So they don't get a grade on it, but if you haven't done the quizzes or if you haven't taken notes on the videos, and you know, sometimes I offer both options, then sorry, you'll have to come back after you do that. And that might seem kind of, you know, putting your thumb down on someone, but they get the message real quickly that, you know, these machines are expensive, the time to practice them is limited, you need to come prepared, or you're not gonna get a whole lot of benefit out of it, and you're gonna drag your group down. It's usually like another student in the group that will say, you know, I can't believe you didn't do that. Now you've like thrown us all off. But that was one solution.
So do you do a lot of group work in these hybrid model?
We do. I tend to assign semester-long groups. And in this class, I allow, their practice times coincide with another class. And the other class has lab like 9 to 11, 11 to 1, and 1 to 3. So I have them the first day of class get in rows, and if in the time they have the other labs. So then I know those people can be grouped up together, and we'll have this same free time available to sign up for practice. So that's sort of how I manage dividing them into smaller groups.
Okay, and they work synchronously or asynchronously online? They're geographically separated, correct?
Not in class, they all come together, but online, yes, they work asynchronously.
I mean, they're inside of Kentucky.
Yeah, our master's is a on-site master's program. Our doctorate's online, but our master's is on-site. And so we're able to do in-class and hybrid classes. And there are some online classes that the master's students can take, but the whole program would be difficult to put online because of these hands-on skills.
What was your learning curve on plate positive? About how long did it take you to really get the hang of it?
Not very long.
So pretty
yes.
Easy.
You know, probably an hour or two. It really was. But I had already done Zaption.
Right. Okay.
So it was very similar. Yeah. So that might be the explanation, is that it might, you know, take a little time if you're not familiar with a product that does that.
Any more questions?
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Do you want me to just click out of everything?
No, just leave it there.
Okay.
I'll stop recording.